Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a great pleasure to introduce President Pedro Sanchez, who is coming to Davos freshly confirmed by the Spanish Parliament after winning 2 elections in a row. The President just appointed his cabinet, the first coalition government in the recent democratic history of the country. Spanish economy is strong. Growth is above the EU average. Jobs are being created, exports are robust. Yet structural reforms cannot wait any longer, so reforms. The path will not be easy, but I'm sure that under your renewed leadership, Spain will successfully weather the current global slowdown and transform its productive model, making it more inclusive and sustainable. Internationally, President Sanchez has also emerged as one of the great champions of multilateralism. This is encouraging at a moment when precisely we need true internationalist leaders more than ever. We saw that very recently when Spain came to the rescue and offered to host the COP25 in Madrid, or organized it in just 3 weeks. They organized this major conference with tens of thousands of participants, which normally takes years to plan. This highlighted Spain's unmitigated commitment towards the fight against climate change. And President Sanchez is also a leader in the promotion of gender equality, and the activism of his government in this area is a shining example for many other countries worldwide. And let me share with you that President Sanchez's commitment to multilateralism is also felt and benefiting the OECD. Actually, Spain will be chairing our ministerial council meeting this year at the end of May, and this will be an instrumental meeting as we rethink our model of progress. At a time when inequalities, environmental degradation, and citizens' discontent invite us to pause and think on the future we want, I'm glad that Spain has put the focus on our ministerial and how we can bring about a new inclusive and sustainable growth model. A model that accounts for the extraordinary technological and demographic transformations that are taking place. A model that measures progress for what it should really be: better lives for our citizens without leaving anyone behind. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Angel, for your kind words. Spain is today seen by the world as a stable democracy that seeks to strengthen its values by developing citizens' rights, combating inequality, and committing to social justice and equality between men and women. So in the face of nationalist regression in every sphere, my government is firmly committed to effective and inclusive multilateralism as the only solution to address the major global challenges of our times. Spain, as you know, is a southern European country. It has fraternal ties with the Latin American countries due to history and language. It is a neighbor of Africa. It shares age-old friendship with the people of the Middle East, and it has an ever greater aspiration to strengthen its ties to Asia, which has become the world's fulcrum in recent decades. Spain is therefore an open country with a clear will to continue fighting for a more open and cohesive world, a world that finds its inspirations in the Agenda 2030, an agenda that contains, in my opinion, all the policy lessons we need for this decade. And precisely because Spain is a country that is open to the world, it is well aware that the challenges faced on every continent in this second decade of the 21st century are the same for all, with different degrees of intensity and urgency, but exactly the same. Just a few days ago, I presented the mandatory government program to the Spanish Parliament in order to obtain its vote of confidence. The program described the 5 challenges facing Spanish society and the 5 transformations necessary to overcome them. And please allow me to explain them here so that together we may see how this description of Spain is also a description of the world as a whole. Firstly, the consolidation of economic growth that involves the creation of decent jobs. Economic growth at any cost is not acceptable. Growth that widens the social divide is not acceptable. Growth that creates pockets of working poor is not acceptable. We need to grow and distribute at the same time, and we must therefore ask ourselves what we are doing to prepare for the major change in our job market. Spain's economy continues to grow at a faster pace than that of the Eurozone, as Sanchez has mentioned before, but we need to improve our competitiveness, productivity and cohesion to make that growth sustainable in the long term. And we will do so without ever letting decent employment out of our sight. We do not want a future of precariousness or of working poverty. The second challenge is what I want to talk is the digital transformation of our economies. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology and robotics are not mere links in the chain of ongoing economic change, but true levers for total transformation. In a decade, our production systems, our mobility, our cities, our health and our everyday lives will be completely different to how they are now. There will be new products, new markets, new ways of organizing our activity. So our goal is to make all of that contribute to greater economy and social well-being for the majority of our citizens, and not to the gradual breakdown of our welfare state. Our society's human capital will be key to promoting and enabling technological change. Spain's new government wishes to make education and research its center of gravity because they are the guarantee of a good future. We are going to commit to training at all levels, especially vocational training, which needs a major boost in our country. By 2025, Spain will need to have created 200,000 new vocational training places and strengthened teacher training and the link between training and the productive sectors. The third challenge, ladies and gentlemen, is the ecological transition. No other challenge is better proof of the fact that the challenges we face in a country like Spain are actually the challenges facing all of us. An area in Australia that is bigger than the Netherlands and Belgium combined is in flames. Puerto Rico is being flooded by torrential rains. But here as well, very close to where we are now, glaciers are melting at a great speed. Swiss glaciers have shrunk by 10% in these past 5 years. So the climate emergency is a disaster that knows no borders, and we are the last generation that will be able to address it effectively. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, the assembly of which will be chaired by Spain in 2021, the damage caused in 2018 by natural disasters, increasingly linked to climate change, amounted to $165 billion. In Spain, for the first time, the government has a vice president, not only one for digitalization, but other for the ecological transition, placing, therefore, climate action at the heart of the government's policy. Just yesterday, the Cabinet approved a climate emergency declaration, and we are firmly committed to advancing towards a decarbonized energy model underpinned by renewable resources. And to achieve these goals, Spain has presented its strategic framework for energy and climate as a roadmap for reducing greenhouse emissions in the coming decade. Our aim for 2030 is to reduce our emissions by 20% compared with 1990, and our ultimate goal is to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 with a 100% renewable electricity system. But in the same way that no economic growth can be good if it does not reduce inequalities, no ecological transition can be positive if it not just, if it leaves people behind. The government of Spain, and I'm very proud of this, has prepared a just transition strategy, the first of its kind in the world, in line with the European Union's Green New Deal, which seeks to protect the most vulnerable with respect to the necessary transformations. A strategy enabling all citizens to make the most of the job opportunities and improved competitiveness and social cohesion generated. No one must be left behind. But regarding the ecological transition and the consequent change to the economy, I would like to highlight something important. It is within our reach to ensure that the impacts constitute a major leap forward, to make this change opportunities for modernization, for useful investments and for job creation, to make them boost for the global economy. Spain's government is going to work towards that horizon. Spain's Integrated National Energy and Climate Plan for 2021-2030, which was presented by the government to the European Union, received the highest assessment among all the member states. We are going to mobilize 236 billion euros in public and private funding between 221 and 230, and we are going to create between 250,000 and 364,000 new jobs in a decade. The fourth challenge we're facing is a real equality between women and men. As Ángel has said, Spain is very committed with this agenda. Half of the world's population cannot continue suffering sexual aggression, employment discrimination and lower income, but neither can the other half, the men, continue allowing the waste of women's talents and the flagrant violation of the most basic human rights. It is not fair. Moreover, it is not even efficient, because greater participation of women in the economy would have positive effects on growth, and as proven in many studies. Feminism is and shall continue to be one of the hallmarks of this Spanish government, and this is reflected in the gender-balanced composition of our cabinet, in which 3 of the 4 vice presidents are women. And this hallmark of our identity will also be reflected in the development of public policies favouring equality, a law that ensures equal pay through pay transparency, equal paternity and maternity leave, the organisation of working hours. This is a big challenge in Spain, to enable the sharing of family care responsibilities, and the unwavering fight against gender violence. The fifth and final challenge we are facing is that of social justice. We live in prosperous societies which nevertheless have alarming levels of poverty and social vulnerability. Inequality, instead of declining, is becoming more acute. And therefore, I remember last year here in Davos, the Dutch writer Rutger Bregman said something very interesting. He said something like this: I hear people taking the language of participation and justice and equality and transparency, but then almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance. And this is true, in my opinion. We say little about taxes, about fiscal justice, and let us not fool ourselves. There can be no social justice without tax justice. But I believe that the time has come to go one step further. It is not enough to redistribute income through taxes. We must advance towards redistribution, towards ensuring that the markets function in a fair and a more democratic manner. The empirical evidence is there, is overwhelming, and shows that efficiency and equity are directly related, that growth and reasonable distribution are mutually compatible. Only growth that is inclusive and respectful of the planet can be sustainable. We all know our history. After the Second World War, Europe signed on to a pact that recognized the impossibility of achieving peaceful societies while large pockets of misery endured within them. I'm referring, of course, to the famous Social Democratic Pact, which laid the groundwork for the principal hallmark of the European Union, which is welfare state and social cohesion. A second stage was ushered in at the beginning of the 80s that led to deregulation, and the excessive financialization of the economy, which created in the year 2008 the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression, whose aftershocks are still felt by our societies. The time, I believe, has come, therefore, to enter a new era that reinstates collective progress, social inclusion, and protection of the most vulnerable members of our societies as hallmarks of our identity. A new era that resolves the failures of neoliberalism through the solvency of social democracy. A new era that never again allows economic progress to be made at the cost of human beings. We have a long way to go, but there's already a clear blueprint of what we must start doing. Discuss taxes and tax havens, and work openly towards fiscal justice. Establish a minimum living wage that ensures that all citizens can live free from poverty, focusing particularly on children. Establish a new social compact that balances the generation of income and, through redistribution, reduce the strain on the welfare state, thereby strengthening it. Address the aging of our society and reform our public pension system to ensure decent pensions that are economically sustainable. The new government of Spain, and Ángel mentioned it before, consists of a coalition between the Spanish Socialist Party and Unidas Podemos, a party to the left of the Socialist Party. It will not be a government that stands back and watches, but one that is willing to act, not an instrumentalized government, but one that is committed to society and to the future, a government, in short, that champions accountability. We also set out to show that the far right and also closer border nationalism can only be fought in one way, through politics or through the politics of the common goods, providing a response to people's problems. Citizens will believe in democracy if democracy believes in them, in each and every one of them, if it strives to provide them with opportunities. Otherwise, our social market economy will not survive. Our model of freedoms will not survive. These 5 major challenges, which are Spain's challenges but are shared by all, will be addressed in a positive context of growth and job creation, albeit at lower rates than in recent years, with a Spanish economy that is clearly more robust and more balanced than in the past, an economy which continues to correct the bubbles and excesses of the past times, making it more resistant to internal and external shocks. And in this undertaking, we will at all times exercise fiscal rigor and sound management of our public accounts. This is why we maintain our commitment to reducing the deficit and public debt levels, which will undoubtedly generate greater confidence among economic agents and enable us to have a government with greater possibilities for action and future investments. The strong performance of the Spanish economy generates trust, as reflected in the relevant indicators: the risk premium, our low public debt interest rates, the significant upturn in investments, and positive foreign investment figures all make us optimistic about the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the Spanish government has a mandate for 1,400 days, but we will carry out our work thinking about the next 3,000 days, the next 5,000 days. We must think about the world that we want to have in 2030 and in 2050, and we must work for the future now. A world with sustainable economic growth in which no one with a job is poor, a world in which artificial intelligence and technology have freed us from many onerous tasks and have contributed to the well-being of all citizens, a clean, ecological, sustainable world, a planet with no sell-by date, a world in which men and women earn the same salaries and enjoy the same rights and the same security, and a world, in short, in which wealth is properly distributed and in which no one is robbed of the opportunity to enjoy a decent standard of living. At last year inaugural session, the founder of Davos, the economist Klaus Schwab, warned us that we are at a critical moment in the history of humankind and call on us to ensure that globalization 4.0 is more human, more inclusive, and more sustainable. This is precisely the goal of the Spanish government, the new Spanish government, to embrace all the opportunities opened by the fourth industrial revolution in order to build a fairer society in a more sustainable world with multilateral governance. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. President, Europe, there's growing fragmentation on the political side, there's growing polarization, how do you, now that you've gotten your government together and you got your coalition together, you were thinking about the future, how do you think that Europe could deal with this issue of fragmentation and polarization? After all, how can we gather around the values that are common, many of which you mentioned a moment ago?
Well, of course, we have many challenges ahead as the European Union, but I'm quite optimistic. The outcome of the electoral results last May, last year, I think was very positive for the European Union. For those political forces that we believe that the way out and the solutions for many challenges that we have in our societies needs a stronger Europe. The center-right, liberals and also social democrats, and also with the participation of the Green parties, we reach a clear majority in the parliament in order to pass many laws that we need in our countries. So I'm quite optimistic about this new term of the new Commission. Secondly, I think that, well, we have cleaned some doubts and some, I would say, difficulties last year with the Brexit. I think that after the UK elections, we are facing a new kind of negotiations with the UK. I'm looking forward to collaborating with the UK government. I think that we can reach as soon as possible a very positive agreement for the European Union and also for the UK. I think it's in the interest of both sides to reach that positive and constructive agreement with the better relations or the best relations that we can reach in this new situation. And thirdly, all these 5 transformations that I mentioned as the main goals of the new Spanish government are completely aligned with the strategy stated by the new President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, before the European Parliament. Of course, always, my dear friend, the problem is how you back all those policies with the resources. And this is the big debate that we will have in Europe. How are we going to agree in a new financial, let's say, pluriannual plan for the next years? But I'm quite optimistic about the political support of the European values, and of course the new Commission that I think is, very with the enough strength in order to reach those challenges. Of course, from our side, from the Spanish government, we are going to be very constructive and very, supportive of this new term.
Mr. President, Latin America, Ibero-America, as it's sometimes called. Typically, we think of Spain as the bridge, Europe to Latin America. But today, Latin America seems to be the focus of discontent, and flare-ups. Now, how do you believe that this discontent, this frustration, especially by youth, can be addressed? Obviously, what do you think Europe could do about it? And last but not least, of course, Spain, please.
Well, it's true. I mean, Angel, you come from Mexico. You know quite well, much better than me, the situation and the reality of Latin America. Latin America is not a a compact and homogeneous area. You have many countries with diversity of language, culture, etc. I think that from our side, from the European Union side, and especially from the Spanish side, it's very important to strengthen the integration process in the region. I think that the lack of integration in Latin America is something that is working against their interest. So, for instance, when I had the opportunity to meet most of the leaders of Latin America, they complain a lot about the migration crisis because of Venezuela, because of Nicaragua, and because of, well, climate change refugees that, of course, in Central America, they're suffering, especially in Honduras, no, for instance, no, to put an example. I think that is crucial for Latin America to strengthening their regional integration process. We have seen some interesting cases, for instance, in the alliance in the Pacific. I'm looking forward to strengthening that collaboration also with Mercosur. You know that we reached finally last year an agreement between the European Union and the Mercosur, and we are now about to ratify this trade agreement in the national parliament. Of course, that trade agreement with Mexico, with Chile, with Central America, and of course this strategic discussion with Cuba that we are about to negotiate as the European Union. I think that they have to put more focus on this regional integration process, and of course on our side, I think it's very important, it's crucial to have this Latin American perspective from the European Union side. It's a pity that, for instance, the only space of multilateralism that we have from the Latin American side and the European side is this Ibero-American summit that this year is going to be gathered in Andorra, no? Very close from here. I think that we need, in this new term for the European Commission, to boost this collaboration, for instance, with this meeting of the CELAC. That would be an extraordinary idea, an initiative of the new Commission for the years to come.
Mr. President, in your speech about Spain, you mentioned inclusion, and you mentioned reforms. Is there something about Latin America that maybe they could share about this?
I was speaking with President Duque from Colombia and President Lenin from Ecuador, and of course to have redistribution, you need to have strong fiscal systems. And one of the challenges that Latin American governments are facing nowadays is how they strengthen their fiscal system in order to have policies that redistribute that richness among the people.
Mr. President, last but not least, Spain. Now, you just formed your government. You just announced your government plans. It was validated by the Parliament. So you now have a clear mandate ahead, but you're in the midst of a global slowdown with trade tensions as high as they have ever been, and with an average tariff for trade as high as it's been in a long, long time, and with growing inequalities across the board. So it's a tough environment in which you're going to have to deliver. And on top of that, of course, you have a very clear social agenda and climate.
Absolutely.
As you have said. So could you tell us a little bit of the secret of how you mix them all?
Well, I think that in my opinion, our goals, our main goals, of course, is to defend the welfare state. Of course, is to provide social inclusion. You know, Angel, for instance, in our country is something, you know, that for me is very negative. I mean, it's a negative impression, but it's the truth. We have 2.2 million kids in poverty. So we need to strengthen these inclusion policies in order to give opportunities, especially for the youth. As you mentioned in many reports of the OECD, The inequality, especially in our country, in my country, in Spain, is suffered by the youth. And it is because we design a welfare state that is much more focused on the elderly than on the youth. And it's not a problem of, confronting one generation to the other, but to reinvent and to redesign most of these social policies in order to be much more not only efficient but also positive. No? Secondly, I think that for Spain it's crucial to lead digitalization, to lead transitional or the ecological transition. I think that we can create a lot of new opportunities, not only for enterprises, but also job creation. Of course, in the end, not only for big companies, but also for governments, it's crucial to have planification, to see, your work not only on a week-by-week basis, but, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. This is something I lack not only in the public debate in Spain, but also everywhere. Politicians, governments, we need to think about our countries and our continents, for instance, the European Union, in the midterm. What we want to be and how we provide ourselves with the instruments and the tools to deliver it. And I see the European Union and Spain leading the ecological transition, leading an industry that is respectful with the planet, leading the social inclusion, and leading, of course, a new era of digitalization. Digitalization is also a very interesting debate about property, rights, freedoms, and when you see what is happening in China or in the United States, I see that for us as Europeans, this can represent a huge opportunity, not only for economic growth, not only for labor opportunities, but also to create much more democratic societies in the world, which I think is also very important for all of us.
Mr. President, thank you so much for the time, for the opportunity, and let me ask our very numerous public today to express their appreciation and give you a send-off with the best of luck
Thank you very much.
Your new mandate.
Thank you very much.
Dear Madam President, Ursula von der Leyen, dear Ursula, we are just at the beginning of a new, decisive decade for Europe. I am convinced, Madam President, that your clearly defined strategy and visionary leadership will benefit the Commission and the future of Europe. The priorities that you have set for the European Union are consequential. Europe has the potential to provide global leadership on the challenges we need to address urgently: climate change, the fourth industrial revolution, inclusive digitalization, growth, competitiveness, as well as Europe's role in the world. I deeply believe that reconciling our planet and our economy with the goal of achieving the first climate-neutral continent will serve, and has to serve, as a global role model for sustainable capitalism. I look forward to witnessing the transformational journey under your leadership. Madam President, we welcome you very cordially, not the first time here in Davos, but because you served also in the board of the World Economic Forum, but the first time as the President of the European Commission.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, dear Klaus, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back here. Indeed, the World Economic Forum stands for multilateralism, for global cooperation, for listening to each other, for new ideas for the future. And I'm very well aware that some say that the global order, as we've built together the last 50 years, is outdated. And whether we agree or not, we all have to recognize that it has been challenged every day. And this is not a question of only one country or one party or one president. It is a global phenomenon driven by personal sentiments. People feel that their workplace is changing before their eyes. They're worried about the future of their business or the future of their families. They stick to all the rules. They give their very best every day. But no matter how hard they try, they feel the world is moving faster. And well, there are different ways to deal with these obvious changes. You can either move forward at the exclusion of others, like restricting the internet, fueling nationalism, building on a narrative us versus them, or you can take an inclusive approach, cooperate with your neighbors, bring to the table all the scientists from all over the world, connect your business and your innovators to create new markets and sustainable jobs. And those are the answers people are asking for. They are ready to change, but they want to see that they can make a decent living. And to find these solutions among nations, I think we need to upgrade and modernize our international fora, and we need leadership to take these topics to the next level. There is no better example for this than climate change. It is a global challenge. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us agree that we need to act. We feel the urgency. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. If you look at the droughts, the floods, the fires, the heat waves, the rising ocean, the extreme weather situations we've had before, but not as frequent and not as intense as it is today. The World Economic Forum's so-called Global Risk Report identifies that the top 5 risks for our economy are all climate-related. There is still scope to address these risks, but the window of opportunity is rapidly closing. We have to act now. And this is the reason why the European Commission presented as its first priority the European Green Deal. Europe will be the world's first climate-neutral continent by 2050. And it will do whatever it takes to unlock the investment, the innovation, and the creativity that is needed. Over the next decade, the European budget will mobilize €1 trillion of investment. It's going to be European money, national co-financing, private investment. This is you who we need to join. And of course, strongly supported by the European Investment Bank. This is our climate bank. And this will create a green investment wave. And there is a demand for it. Last month, 44 of Europe's largest investors, representing €6 trillion of assets, called on the European Union to put climate neutrality into law. They want that law. They say they need that law because it will give them the confidence, the accountability, and the reliability to make long-term investments. The European Green Deal is our new growth strategy. The novelty and the difference to our fossil fuel-based model is that we will foster growth that is not extracting resources, but that gives back to the planet more than it takes away from it. And Europe has the first mover advantage, and will strengthen it. I think the whole world increasingly needs clean technologies and new solutions, because we will all face the same limits of fossil fuel-based growth, and therefore Europe will seize the opportunity. Our battery alliance, smart grids, green hydrogen power, offshore wind power, clean steel, decarbonized gas, you name it. This will create innovation, it will create value, and it will create jobs. But there is no point in only reducing greenhouse gas emissions at home if we increase the import of CO2 from abroad. And this is not only a climate issue, it's also a climate issue, but it's not only a climate issue, it is also an issue of fairness. It is a matter of fairness towards our business, of fairness towards our workers, and we will protect them from unfair competition. One way for doing so is a carbon border adjustment mechanism. Frankly, I prefer to encourage our trading partners to work with us for a global level playing field for the benefit of all of us. California, for example, is showing the way with an emission trading system that covers 85% of CO2 emissions. And I also commend China for taking the first steps towards a CO2 pricing system. And these may be only first steps towards a level playing field. But if we achieve a global pricing for CO2 or for greenhouse gas emissions, if it turns into a global trend, we will have a global level playing field where no carbon border tax is needed anymore. And this is an example of a new modern international framework we need. This shows that if you engage with Europe, you will find a reliable partner working for a more sustained world. But we ask for fairness in return. And we have a lot to offer. We are the largest single market in the world. We are one of the 3 largest economies. We are the largest source and destination of foreign direct investment. We have more than 80 free trade agreements and over 700 international economic agreements. And the next negotiations will start in February with our British friends. All these agreements are not just about trade. They are platforms to shape and harness globalization. And they are drivers to build common solutions to challenges such as climate change or digitalization. We will be, for sure, moving out of an economy based on fossil fuels, and we will be moving towards a sustainable and a digital economy. We're working on this digital economy, and we consider, of course, data as a renewable resource such as wind or sun. Every 18 months, we double the amount of data we produce. Every 18 months. These are industrial data, commercial data, 85% of which we never, ever use. And this is not sustainable. Within such data, there are hidden treasures. There are untapped opportunities for business and for society. And therefore, Europe is going to co-create a framework to allow the use of these data. It should consist of a trusted pool of non-personalized data that governments, businesses, and other stakeholders can contribute to. And thereby, we open up data as a resource for innovation and bring new solutions to the market. And our scientists are already beginning to do this. We are creating a European open science cloud now. It is a trusted space for researchers to store their data and to access data from researchers from other disciplines. We will create a pool of information leading to a web of research insight. And every researcher will be able to better use not only their own data, but also those of others. They will thus come to new insights, they will have new findings, new solutions. This is what we call the European Open Science Cloud, and we are the first in the world to do so. It is being developed in Europe, for European researchers, for European solutions. But the idea is that once we have the rules of the game ready, we will open this up to a broader public sector and to business as well, so that companies can come in, share the data, and use the data. And the idea is that we will open it up to international players too in the very end. We have the biggest European science organizations like the CERN or the MBL, the European Molecular Biology Laboratory, major national centers, universities, and many, many others. It is from science, for science, but with a clear perspective to open it up to a broader society and economy. Enabling sharing of non-personal data will be one important pillar of our new data strategy. The other pillar is the protection of personal data. Ladies and gentlemen, for us, the protection of a person's digital dignity is the overriding principle. For us, the individual is not just a mere customer or not just a data point among others. Within the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, we set the standards for the world. And we have to set a similar frame for artificial intelligence too. A frame that allows progress and allows research while protecting the personal privacy, autonomy and safety. A frame that allows business and digital solutions to grow in Europe, provided that they comply with it. A framework which will also give guidance to international companies, those who want to do business in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about Europe shaping its own future. But to be more assertive in the world, we know we must step up in some fields. Recent events have exposed where we have to do more. Libya shows the cost of division and hesitation. I just come from the conference on Libya in Berlin last Sunday. It was good to see that the international community took an important step in the right direction. And you can count on the European Commission to strongly support the process towards reconciliation and reconstruction. It takes very little power to break a fragile balance. But the true power lies in putting the pieces together, back together again. And during the last decade, Europeans learned the importance of a stable neighborhood. From Ukraine to the shores of the Mediterranean, from the Western Balkans to the Sahel, we have learned the importance to invest more in long-term stability and to prevent crises. And this is where Europe can make a real difference. We are the largest donor for development cooperation in the world. In fact, we invest in this more than the rest of the world combined. But we must also do more when it comes to managing crises as they develop. And for that, Europe also needs credible military capabilities, and we have set up the building blocks of a European Defence Union. It is complementary to NATO, and it is different. There is a European way to foreign policy and foreign security policy, where hard power is an important tool, without any question, but it is never the only one. Hard power always comes with diplomacy and conflict prevention. It always comes with reconciliation and reconstruction, which is, by the way, something Europeans know very well, because we all have gone through this here in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, while the world around us is changing, the things we want from life remain the same. We want to take pride in our work. We want to spend time with our loved ones. We want to breathe clean air and to drink clean water. We want to feel at home where we live. We want to feel confident that our children will have all these things we take for granted. And if we want to stay true to all we hold dear, we need to be open-minded, we need to embrace change, we have the collective responsibility to find new ways to make this possible, we need to rediscover the power of cooperation based on fairness, based on mutual respect. And this is what I call geopolitics of mutual interests. This is what Europe stands for. This is what Europe will work for. And with all those who are ready to join, thank you for your attention.
Madam President, listening to you as a European, I'm proud, because you give back a strong feeling of let's do it, and let's not just complain that we are lagging behind others. We have the capability not only to do it, but to lead it. I think that was the essence of your message. Now, I don't want to sound critical now and to put some, let's say, salt into the water. Europe was built on the notion of unity in diversity. And today we sometimes have the feeling it's more diversity in unity. So my question is, how do you ensure that the political unity and cooperation across European member states will exist to really successfully implement your priorities like the Green Deal, competitiveness, digital agenda, and of course, what you said at the end, the geopolitical commission, if I may say so.
Yeah. Yes, this is the challenge, and this is the beauty of the European Union, because if you briefly look at the history, when I was born and went to school, there were only 6 member states. Today, just one lifespan later, we have 28 member states. And of course, this is always a challenge between the national interests and the common European interest we have to define. And relating to your question, the good part at the moment being is, of course, we had times of hesitation and we had times of division. But we all now feel the urge of having to move forward, not only in the field of the European Green Deal, but also in digitalization, also in the topic of migration, for example. The good part is, I've put forward my political guidelines, but there's also, since summer, the so-called strategic agenda of the European Council. This is all heads of state and government of the member states. And it's strongly overlapping. So, in other words, the political chambers have the absolute same agenda. On top comes the European Parliament with a very strong push towards this agenda too. But there's one more point that is more convincing. It's the European people. The European people have understood that we have to step forward what climate change is concerned. The European people have understood that in digitalization we have to put our own European way forward. And I think it's very important for politics and policies never to oversee if the people move forward, that we adapt our policies and are delivering what they are asking for. And therefore, we are in a fortunate situation that all these different entities of the European Union come together with one very strong call to be the first climate-neutral continent in 2050, to step forward in digitalization, as I pointed out, and I think this is a very good precondition to really be active and to move forward.
I think when you have the right strategy, having been a teacher for strategic management, when you have the convincing strategy, people will follow. Mm-hmm. But you have one additional obstacle, because until the end of this year, the Brexit discussion, and maybe even beyond this year, the Brexit discussion will absorb a lot of energy of the Commission. Mm-hmm. Do you see that this will slow down, particularly in the critical first phase, the ability of implementation of your ideas?
A clear answer is no, and I'll explain why. First of all, we have been dealing with the phenomenon Brexit already since 3.5 years now. We have a task force. You all know Michel Barnier. He's heading the task force. So this will be the ongoing task force for the negotiations with our British friends. And this is separated from the daily business we were just talking about, we have to fulfill in the Commission. There are 3 more points I want to mention. First of all, we do have now the withdrawal agreement, which has gone through the European Parliament and the British Parliament. And within the withdrawal agreement, we've solved the biggest problem we had ahead of us. The one is citizens' rights. It was very important for us to have clarity on citizens' rights. We have 3.5 million European citizens living in the UK and vice versa, 1.2 million British citizens living in the European Union. It's good for them. They have their rights secured. Second, peace on the island of Ireland was of utmost importance for us. We wanted and we did protect our member state Ireland, and this is successful done with the withdrawal agreement. And the third point in the withdrawal agreement is the financial settlement. We're fine with that too. We have on top the so-called political declaration, which is kind of a chapeau that is describing the roadmap we want to go on together. And therefore, I just described that things are very well set for the negotiations. Now we will work day and night to get that done. There's one last point we have to be very clear on. There is a difference whether you are a member state or you're not a member state, what access to the single market is concerned. So the closer the United Kingdom is to the European Union, the better the access to the single market. If it's the UK's choice not to do so, to be more distant to the European Union, well, then there will be more distance, of course, to the single market, what level playing field is concerned, and what free movement of goods, capital and services is concerned.
Madam President, the people here in the hall, the business people, they are very affected positively if you succeed. What would be your message to them? How can they help you to make happen what you have in mind for Europe?
Yeah. Thank you for giving me these opportunities. The first message is we are friends. I mean, I pay tribute to 45 years of contribution of our British friends to the European Union, all these civil servants who shaped this European Union too. We are friends, we share so many of common values and common interests. If you look at the rest of the globe, well, we know that we're sitting on the same side of the table and we have a lot in common. Now we have to sort out this very clear thing, what I just said, access to the single market. There is a condition, either you align and you accept the rules, then you're close, or you are more distant. This is the UK's choice, so you can shape this choice too, but the overarching message is we are friends, we have been friends, and we will be friends because we have so much in common to defend.
So let's conclude this session by saying, let's work together to make your vision happening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Europe is not just the Commission. Europe is the European Parliament also. And we have the great pleasure to welcome David Sassoli, who is the President of the European Parliament. Dear Mr. President, it is my pleasure to welcome you to your first annual meeting in your new role as President of the European Parliament. As we enter this new decade, Europe faces, as we have heard, several critical challenges. Today, we are witnessing the rise of a new generation of citizens in Europe that are demanding a greener, more inclusive and more secure future. The high turnout in the 2019 European parliamentary elections was driven by a surge in participation by young people and an overall turnout at the elections of just over 50%, the highest since '94. Now, Mr. President, with this new Parliament, we just listened to the strategies which are in the mind of the Commission. How do you react as a Parliament and how do you support those visionary ideas of digitalization, of a greener Europe? Will you provide the majority to make this happen? Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Bonjour, good morning. Buongiorno professor Schwab, grazie per l'invito, grazie per questa possibilità di festeggiare con voi i 50 anni di Davos, della sua istituzione. Abbiamo appena ascoltato il discorso del Presidente della Commissione europea, come abbiamo sentito l'inizio di questo ciclo istituzionale europeo ha posto al centro le sue priorità e concentrandosi nella lotta contro il riscaldamento globale e la transizione ecologica. In questo contesto, l'11 dicembre, pochi giorni dopo il suo insediamento, la Commissione ha annunciato in Parlamento una tabella di marcia per l'attuazione del Green Deal europeo. Sono misure importanti, concrete, a sostegno di questa tabella di marcia, che sono state presentate la scorsa settimana dalla Commissione e comprendono importanti investimenti finanziati dalla Banca Europea per gli investimenti, la BEI, con il sostegno dei programmi previsti dal quadro finanziario pluriennale. Il Parlamento, in qualità di colegislatore, sarà chiamato naturalmente a discutere le proposte della Commissione, a modificarle qualora lo si ritenga opportuno. In particolare, per tutti serve adeguare la coerenza tra la diagnosi che tutti noi condividiamo in merito al rischio climatico e i mezzi impegnati per affrontarlo. A tale proposito, il ruolo del mondo della finanza, attraverso l'individuazione di investimenti ecologicamente responsabili e della Banca Centrale Europea, dovrebbe essere discusso senza tabù. E da questo punto di vista la signora Lagarde ha dimostrato molta disponibilità ad avviare una discussione in questo senso e ne siamo molto lieti. Siamo convinti dell'importanza del percorso offerto all'inizio di questa legislatura dalla Commissione e dal Parlamento, ma siamo convinti che la trasformazione civile che l'Europa intende realizzare per affrontare l'emergenza climatica richieda che si tenga conto naturalmente della sua dimensione sociale e della lotta alle disuguaglianze, che dovranno accompagnare necessariamente questa trasformazione. Non dobbiamo dimenticare che le sfide ambientali possono essere risolte solo se mettiamo la riduzione delle disuguaglianze al centro dell'azione politica. Le sfide riguardanti il clima e le disuguaglianze possono essere risolte solo insieme. Infatti le disuguaglianze e la povertà hanno molteplici effetti sul nostro ambiente. Le famiglie più povere sono meno inclini a cambiare il loro stile di vita, in termini di riduzione di rifiuti, di riciclaggio. Più in generale, le società più egualitarie hanno una migliore situazione ambientale e una maggiore capacità di diventare più sostenibili. Al contrario, una società disuguale, in cui ampie fasce della popolazione vivono in condizioni di povertà, alimenta la crisi ecologica. Non siamo uguali e non siamo uguali neppure davanti alla crisi ecologica. Ricchi o poveri, anziani o giovani, a seconda di dove viviamo, non sono colpiti allo stesso modo dalla crisi climatica. Ad esempio il clima. L'abbiamo visto in Europa, eccezionalmente caldo e secco della scorsa estate, lo ricordate? Ha avuto un impatto devastante sui terreni agricoli europei, riducendo il raccolto di ortaggi e aumentando il loro prezzo per il consumatore finale. Ciò riguarda in particolare le famiglie a basso reddito, poiché la spesa per il cibo rappresenta una grande parte del loro budget familiare mensile. La crisi ecologica sta quindi aggravando la crisi sociale e aumenta le disuguaglianze. La disuguaglianza è quindi anche una questione ambientale, così come il degrado è questione sociale. Dobbiamo capire che il progresso ecologico e il progresso sociale devono andare di pari passo. Non possiamo porre fine alla povertà, costruire una società più giusta, lasciando che la crisi ecologica distrugga il nostro pianeta. Ma non possiamo porre fine alla crisi ecologica mentre persistono alti livelli di povertà e di disuguaglianza. È stato importante, signor Schwab, che questo forum sia stato introdotto con le parole di Papa Francesco. Ne consegue che il processo di transizione verso un'economia sostenibile che vogliamo realizzare non può essere visto esclusivamente in termini attraverso il prisma della promozione di investimenti volti a trasformare il nostro modello produttivo. Questa idea si riflette nel concetto di giusta transizione, che mira ad accompagnare aziende, paesi, comunità, territori in una fase di riconversione del nostro modello produttivo, con azioni sociali molto impegnative. In questo senso, il Just Transition Fund, presentato la scorsa settimana dalla Commissione, è un'iniziativa che può essere accolta con favore. Sebbene le risorse di cui sarà dotato tale fondo dovranno essere discusse perché non sembrano adeguate. A fronte di un PIL annuo dell'Unione Europea di circa 15.000 miliardi di euro e degli enormi costi che le misure di lotta al cambiamento climatico imporranno in particolare alle famiglie, il Fondo per una transizione giusta di 100 miliardi fa riflettere, al fine di garantire un sostegno maggiore, un successo politico. Abbiamo naturalmente la necessità di discutere le risorse che mettiamo a disposizione. Dobbiamo garantire successo al Green Deal europeo E questo è il nostro appello agli Stati europei. L'orizzonte che abbiamo è quello dell'instaurazione di una vera e propria governance socio-ecologica, dal livello più basso al livello più alto, che garantisca la partecipazione di tutta la società alla realizzazione della trasformazione del nostro modello produttivo. E questo implica un forte dialogo sociale a tutti i livelli, con il coinvolgimento delle comunità locali nella progettazione, nell'attuazione delle politiche pubbliche orientate a questo processo di trasformazione. Si tratta quindi di un cambiamento sociale molto ambizioso. Vogliamo sostenerlo, vogliamo, lo ripeto, che abbia successo. Ma per fare questo abbiamo bisogno che le agende degli Stati membri si allineino a quelle dell'agenda europea. Vogliamo lavorare con gli Stati membri, con i nostri paesi, con i nostri governi, perché questo sforzo che dobbiamo compiere è lo sforzo per rilanciare l'Europa, certo, ma i nostri 27 paesi. Questo cambiamento implica una revisione fondamentale del nostro modo di considerare l'attività economica, in particolare la crescita, in contrapposizione al concetto di benessere. La definizione, lo ricordate, delle Nazioni Unite sugli obiettivi di sviluppo sostenibile. Tutto questo va in questa direzione. Focalizzare e valutare i risultati delle politiche su obiettivi di welfare espliciti piuttosto che su concetti astratti come PIL permetterebbe ai cittadini di impegnarsi nella trasformazione delle nostre società. Questa trasformazione deve essere basata su una nuova narrativa europea. In Europa dobbiamo prendere coscienza delle nostre radici, dei nostri valori, ma anche del nostro destino comune, capace quindi di aumentare e alimentare un'etica in grado di andare oltre la semplice logica del profitto economico, di attuare una politica mercantilistica che si traduce solo nel lasciarci alla mercé dei nostri partner attraverso misure di ritorsione commerciale. Dobbiamo liberarci di questa cultura dello spreco, di cui parla Papa Francesco, su cui ha insistito anche ieri la giovane europea Greta. Una cultura che ubbidisce solo al profitto non ci farà crescere. Il progetto europeo che stiamo costruendo deve rafforzare la lotta contro la povertà e ridurre le disuguaglianze. Deve preoccuparsi della dignità delle persone, in particolare nell'ambito del lavoro, attraverso un giusto salario. Deve occuparsi di un obiettivo ambizioso, che è quello di avere e di raggiungere e di lavorare per una fiscalità europea. Sono convinto che rispondere a questa sfida ambientale, sociale, permetterà al nostro continente di essere ancora un punto di riferimento, di rispondere alla domanda di questo secolo: come governeremo la globalizzazione e di quali regole c'è oggi bisogno. Grazie.
Mr. President, I appreciated your comments because they reflect to a certain extent also the theme of this annual meeting when we say we need inclusive and sustainable growth. And I think the two are interdependent. Now I have two questions in principle to you. The first one is, When we look at all those objectives presented by President von der Leyen, by yourself, does Europe still have the right governance structures? You yourself have expressed some opinion, some critical opinion about it, or some new constructive opinion. Could you share how you would like to see the ideal structure for Europe's governance?
Sì, la ringrazio, signor Ursula. Noi abbiamo avuto un mandato dai cittadini nelle ultime elezioni europee e ricorderete che avevamo un'Europa sotto la minaccia dei sovranisti e dei nazionalisti e in realtà le forze europeiste hanno prevalso per volere dei cittadini europei. Naturalmente abbiamo avuto anche un mandato di riaprire il cantiere europeo. Il cantiere europeo è stato fermo per troppi anni, certamente per tutto il periodo della crisi economica e oggi abbiamo bisogno di riaprirlo perché vogliamo riuscire a definire meglio alcuni strumenti della democrazia europea. Abbiamo quindi avviato una stagione che non è solo quella di una nuova legislatura, ma anche di un periodo di riforme. Ecco perché abbiamo lanciato insieme alla Commissione, al Consiglio, l'idea di aprire una conferenza per la democrazia in Europa. Riflettere insieme fra tutte le istituzioni sulle riforme possibili, utili a ciascuna istituzione, utile al funzionamento della democrazia. Quante volte vediamo che la democrazia si blocca e questo naturalmente non aumenta la fiducia dei cittadini nel considerare i sistemi democratici utili per la loro vita, perché riescono a dare delle risposte tempestive. E invece abbiamo un'Europa che spesso inceppa i propri meccanismi, inceppa la democrazia. Allora io credo che questa sia la stagione giusta. Dopo le elezioni, all'avvio di questa legislatura, con uno spirito un po' pionieristico, rimettere in ordine alcuni strumenti che possono consentire all'Europa di sviluppare meglio le proprie politiche, la propria identità, la propria presenza anche sulla scena internazionale.
Does it not mean that in, let's say, even during the mandate of the present European Parliament, which you are leading, that it should lead also to a revision of and to a change of the European treaties? And would you have the political mandate to do so?
Tre considerazioni. La prima, dobbiamo lavorare in questa legislatura insieme alle altre istituzioni se vogliamo ottenere dei risultati. Dobbiamo aprire una fase di ascolto con le istituzioni nazionali, ad esempio i parlamenti nazionali e la società civile, per capire cosa serve all'Europa. Non vogliamo avere conclusioni predefinite, sarebbe un errore, non sarebbe utile e credo che una volta terminata questa fase insieme decideremo gli interventi che saranno utili. Poi non tutto, anzi poco, può essere legato ai trattati, perché noi abbiamo tanta parte del Trattato di Lisbona che non è ancora sviluppato. Mi riferisco ad esempio alle clausole passerella, al voto all'unanimità, alla cooperazione rafforzata, a tutti strumenti che potrebbero non consentire di aprire questioni che riguardano revisioni dei trattati e che potrebbero essere utili ad aggiungere democrazia. E quindi io non voglio predeterminare conclusioni. Vorrei un'Europa pragmatica nel capire cosa è utile e questo naturalmente con uno sguardo alle necessità che oggi la scena internazionale ci pone. La democrazia europea dobbiamo rafforzarla perché è utile sulla scena di un mondo globale che non ha regole e dobbiamo aiutare il mondo ad avere delle regole.
President Sassoli, yesterday we had here in this hall a session where we discussed the need for corporations not only to report and to be accountable for financial results, but to include the so-called ESG measurements, environmental, social and good governance responsibility. Now, I think there was a good support for this approach here in this hall. But you could take the same argument and you could say also governments should not be, or countries, measured on GDP and GDP per person. But actually you should introduce the ESG, environmental, social, good governance measurement system for governments. This could be some also approach to Europe. How do you think about it?
Ne ho parlato nel mio intervento, però ci tengo ad aggiungere questo. Noi abbiamo in questo momento una grande missione, che è quella di rafforzare lo spazio europeo. Lo diciamo da tempo, ma cosa dobbiamo fare? Dobbiamo soprattutto concentrarci per diminuire le distanze tra nord e sud, tra est e ovest. Dobbiamo consentire a paesi che partono nella sfida per il cambiamento climatico da punti molto più alti di dipendenza dal carbone di non subire la concorrenza di chi ha energia a basso costo. Accorciare le distanze. A me, italiano, piacerebbe arrivare al punto in cui la mia opinione pubblica, i miei cittadini riconoscono ad esempio ai paesi del nord e del nord-est che le loro spese militari nei confronti della frontiera europea sono anche per i cittadini italiani, che quello sforzo vale anche per il Sud. Accorciare le distanze per consentire ad esempio ai cittadini del Nord e dell'Est di comprendere che le questioni dell'immigrazione sono anche questioni che riguardano loro e la loro sicurezza. Credo che tutto quello che faremo in questa legislatura debba portare a un rafforzamento dello spazio europeo tramite la riduzione delle distanze. Così come è molto importante concentrarci a ridurre le distanze fra il centro dell'Europa e la sua periferia. Adesso noi apriremo una discussione sul bilancio pluriennale dell'Unione Europea, l'MFF. Sarà una discussione molto importante, dove metteremo i soldi nei prossimi 7 anni. Ma se ad esempio, come qualcuno dice, dovessimo tagliare la politica di coesione, che è uno strumento fondamentale dell'Unione Europea, le distanze le allargheremo o le accorceremo? Io credo che le allargheremo. Ecco perché la battaglia per il bilancio, per un bilancio ambizioso dell'Unione Europea, sia oggi la grande questione che abbiamo di fronte per accorciare le distanze e mettere nella condizione lo spazio europeo di crescere, di svilupparsi e di avere più sicurezza. Grazie.
Mr. President, this legislature of the European Parliament in many ways will be the time, the next years will be decisive. And you are in a very important, decisive role. We wish you all the best in your leadership for making happening what we have heard this morning. Thank you.
Grazie.
Also Pizzeria. Ich muss ja mal hier wieder